Hello, and thank you for joining me. My name is Cheryl Sarnes, and today I will present my consulting report for the Gulf of Maine Aquarium. The goal of this project is to recommend two fish species from different regions of the world for inclusion in the aquarium's new exhibits. My selections are the alligator gar, a Tractoeus spatula, a North American freshwater giant, and the humphead wrasse, Shelenius undulatus, a coral reef species from the Indo-Pacific. I will explore the taxonomy, spatial distribution, life histories, conservation challenges, health considerations, and broader story their exhibits can tell about biodiversity and sustainability. Taxonomy of the alligator gar. As you can see to the right of the video, I have listed a taxonomy for the alligator gar. The alligator gar is one of the most ancient freshwater fishes in North America. It belongs to the order of Lepisociformes, a lineage that dates back over 100 million years, according to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services. Its heavy gonode scales have broad snout, are evolutionary holdovers for prehistoric times, offering a glimpse into the ancient fish morphology. This species plays a crucial ecological role as top predator in river and floodplain systems, helping regulate fish population and maintain ecosystem balances. Its ancient lineage and impressive size make it ideal species for public education and exhibit storytelling. Taxonomy of the humphead wrasse. The humphead wrasse is a large reef fish in the family of the Libridae and one of the most recognizable species in the Indo-Pacific. Known for its prominent forehead hump and bright coloration, it can exceed 2 meters in length and live for more than 30 years. As a keystone predator, the wrasse controls the populations of reef invertebrates, such as crown of thorns starfish, contributing to the coral reef health. Its ecological importance and conservation status make it an excellent choice for public education and international conservation awareness. Related species and evolutionary context. Understanding evolutionary relationships between us contextualizes these species within broader fish diversity. The alligator's gar closest relative include the tropical gar and the Cuban gar, both of which share similar morphology and ancient origins, but occupy distinct geographic ranges. The humphead wrasse belongs to a diverse genus of librids, closely related to the Chenillus fasciatus and the C. oxyphilus, which exhibit variations in size, coloration, and habitat use. These relationships illustrate adaptive radiation in both freshwater and marine systems and support educational messages about fish evolution and diversity. Moving on to morphological and characteristic identifications. Field identification relies on morphological and characteristic traits. As you can see here on the left, alligator gars are distinguished by their elongated bodies, node scales, and broad snouts with 2 rows of sharp teeth. Their dorsal fin has 7 to 10 rays, and they lack an antipose fin. On the right, we have the humpback wrasse. They're deep-bodied with a characteristic hump on their head, cycloid scales, and continuous dorsal fin with 11 to 13 spines and 8 to 10 soft rays. Recognizing these traits are essential for ensuring accurate species collection and maintaining the genetic integrity in the aquarium population. Spatial distribution and habitat. The alligator gar is native to the Mississippi River Basin, extending throughout the Gulf Coast plains and into parts of eastern Mexico, including Veracruz. They thrive in large rivers, oxbows, and floodplain systems, and are uniquely dependent on seasonal flooding for successful spawning. Flooded vegetation areas serve as crucial nursery habitats for juveniles, making hydrological connectivity essential for their life cycle. In contrast, the hump wrasse occupies broad range across the Indo-Pacific, from the Red Sea to eastern African coast to the central Pacific islands. Juveniles inhabit sheltered lagoons and seagrass beds, while adults prefer outer reef slopes, channels, and drop-offs where they feed and form spawning aggregations. Their distribution is tightly linked to a healthy coral reef ecosystem, emphasizing the importance of habitat protection for population sustainability. The maps here show their global range, where the satellite imagery highlights two critical habitat regions: the Mississippi River system for the alligator gar and the Red Sea coral reef system for the humphead wrasse. The habitat photos further illustrate the distinct environments each species depends on throughout its life cycle. Lifespan comparison. The alligator gar and the humphead wrasse have very different life history strategies, and understanding these differences is critical for exhibit planning and long-term care. The alligator gar is a pelagic broadcast spawner, releasing adhesive eggs on submerged vegetation during seasonal flooding from April to June. They produce between 100,000 and 300,000 eggs, but they mature slowly, taking 6 to 11 years to reach sexual maturity. With a lifespan of over 50 years and slow growth rate, they require significant time to recover from population decline. The humphead wrasse follows a different strategy as a protogonist hermaphrodite, meaning individuals begin life as females and some transition into males. They spawn during spring to early summer, often forming aggregation on outer reef slopes and channels. Females produce around 1 million eggs, and they reach maturity slightly earlier, 5 to 7 years for the females and around 9 years for the males. They live over 30 years and have a moderate growth rate. These two contrasting strategies influence how each species should be managed in captivity. The gar's long generation time and slow recovery highlight the need for habitat conservation and breeding support, while the wrasse reproduces plasticity and spawning aggravation emphasizes the importance of social structure and reef health in an exhibit design. Conservation alligator gar. Conservation is incredibly important for the alligator gar, as they experience severe population declines in the 20th century due to overfishing, habitat loss, and floodplain disconnection from the river channelization and dam construction. Once considered a trash fish, they were often targeted for eradication, which further reduced their numbers. Today, many states list the alligator gar as a species of greatest conservation need, and strict regulations such as harvest limit, size restriction, and seasonal closure are now in place to protect the species. Agencies including the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services and state wildlife departments lead efforts to restore habitat connectivity and support repopulation programs. Projects like the Mississippi River Floodplain Reconnection, shown here, are also essential because alligator gar depend on these flooded areas for spawning and juvenile development. Conservation humphead wrasse. The humphead wrasse is currently listed as endangered on the IUCN Red List due to combination of overfishing, illegal trade, and widespread coral reef degradation. Because of its high value in the reef fish market, populations have declined dramatically across much of its range. In response to the species was added to the CITES Index 2 in 2004, which regulates international trade by requiring permits and ensuring that exports do not threaten wild populations. Many Indo-Pacific nations, including Australia, Indonesia, and Philippines, have established no-take zones, marine protected areas, and spawning sites to support population recovery. However, illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing remains one of the greatest challenges. This infographic shows how the sites process from the collection to permit issuance, export, and enforcement works to monitor and control trade. It also highlights how coordination policies and local enforcement are vital to preventing exploitation and ensuring species long-term survival. Sustainability and public education. Public aquariums play an essential role in connecting visitors with conservation action. The alligator gar story highlights how habitat restoration and shifting public perception can restore once declining species. The Humphead Ross story, on the other hand, emphasizes how consumer choices and international collaboration are vital to preventing overexploitation. One of the most impactful ways visitors can help by choosing sustainability sourced seafood. Resources like the Monterey Bay Aquarium Seafood Watch Program guide consumers toward responsible choices that protect vulnerable species and reduce pressure on wild populations. This call to action reminds us that conservation isn't just about policies, it's also about individual decisions. Each purchase we make can help protect ecosystems and the species that are dependent upon them. Fish Health Assessment Protocol. Before any fish is introduced into an exhibit, it's essential to follow constructed health assessment protocol to ensure its well-being and prevent spread of disease. The first step is the initial observation, where we look for changes in swimming behavior, posture, social interactions that might indicate stress or illness. Next, we perform a physical condition check, inspecting the skin, the fins, the eyes, and the gills for signs of any injury, discoloration, or parasites. We then move on into more detailed morphology and behavioral assessment, looking for external abnormalities, changes in body condition, alterations in feeding behavior. At the same time, water quality testing is conducted. Check perimeters such as temperature, pH, dissolved oxygen, and ammonia, since poor water conditions are often linked to health issues. If concerns remain, a clinical examination is performed, which may include mucus scrapes, gill biopsies, or fecal analysis to identify pathogens. Based on these findings, we proceed with diagnosis and documentation, recording all results and planning an appropriate treatment or management strategy. Finally, fish undergo a quarantine and monitoring period for 30 to 45 days before introduction into a main exhibit, which allows us to ensure they are healthy and free of disease. Following this comprehensive protocol is going to help safeguard overall health of the aquarium collection and prevent outbreaks that could threaten both individual fish and entire populations. Moving on to disease risks and treatment. Both the alligator gar and humphead wrasse are susceptible to a variety of pathogens, and understanding these risks are crucial in maintaining aquarium health. Alligator gar often commonly face infestation of Argillus, a parasitic fish louse that attaches to the skin and fins, causing irritation and secondary infections. They may also suffer from an opportunistic bacterial infection if water quality declines or injuries occur. Humphead wrasse are vulnerable to cryptocranian irritants, also known as marine ick, which causes white cyst and respiratory distress, and to the monogenia fluke Neonabidia melanina, which damages the skin and eyes and can spread rapidly in captivity. Effective disease prevention relies on early detection, quarantine, and continuous health monitoring. Treatments such as antiparasitic baths, copper-based medications, and strict quarantine procedures are essential for controlling outbreaks and ensuring fish remain healthy before entering any exhibit. Exhibit and conservation story. The exhibit's conservation story, titled Ancient Predator Coral Giant, brings together two species that represent different yet equally important conservation messages. The alligator gar tells the story of ancient freshwater predators that suffered from habitat loss and persecution, but are now rebounding thanks to restoration and science based management. In contrast, the humphead wrasse illustrates the challenges faced by coral reef ecosystems, where overfishing, illegal trade, reef degradation have pushed these species to endangered status. This exhibit would emphasize their ecological roles. The gar as top freshwater predator that regulates prey populations, and the wrasse as a keystone reef species that controls invertebrate populations and contributes to the coral health. Through storytelling, signage, and interactive elements, visitors will learn how conservation policies, consumer choices, habitat protection all play part of a preserving aquatic biodiversity. The exhibit ultimately shows that the recovery is possible when science, policy, and public action all work together. Reflection and board questions. Of the two species, the alligator gar would be the easiest to collect for the Gulf of Maine Aquarium. It's locally available in the southeastern United States and Gulf coastal plain, and restoration programs often include control collections and relocation efforts. The gar's resilience and availability in wild populations make it a practical and cost effective species to acquire. In contrast, the humphead wrasse has the most comprehensive conservation framework. Its protection under the CITES Appendix 2, combined with marine protected areas, spawning site closures, and strict trade regulations, demonstrates a coordinated international effort to prevent further decline. These practices stand out because they integrate local enforcement with global trade controls, reflecting the complexity of conserving a highly migratory and commercially valuable reef species. This contrast highlights the important point for the aquarium. Conservation strategies must be tailored to each species' biology, distribution, and threats. And a successful program relies on collaboration across scientific, government, and public levels. Thank you for joining me today. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. And if you'd like to look up any kind of information, I have listed my references that I used to collect all of my information. Have a good day.